The A-4 Skyhawk is now a legend in its own time. Created by one man's stubborn insistence that it was possible, when all around him, including his own team of engineers, said it was impossible, the Skyhawk weighed just half of what the specification allowed. Production was planned to extend from 1954 until 1957, but was extended year by year for 26 years. The A-4 became one of the most cost-effective combat aircraft of the jet era. No aircraft in history has ever equaled the achievement of the Douglas A-4 Skyhawk in meeting an official specification at just half the allowed gross weight. By a series of totally radical procedures and painstaking attention to details, not often bothered about by aircraft designers, items, normally bought from subcontractors, Chief Engineer Edward H. Heinemann created a true masterpiece, which at the very early time of the jet era set a standard so high that even today, some users, such as the Israeli Air Force, are hard-pressed to find a replacement that can do the attack job better. Heinemann, chief engineer of the El Segundo Navy plant of Douglas Aircraft, was in 1951 one of the world's most experienced designers of combat aircraft. Many of his aircraft had been attack machines, among them the A-20 Boston Havoc family, the A-26 Invader and the A-1 Sky Raider, which was then called the AD-1. The well-liked Sky Raider could carry heavy loads of many kinds of weapons and could fly missions lasting up to 10 hours, even at low levels. But it was slower and more vulnerable than jets. The latter, however, could not carry much ordnance, and even with drop tanks, were very limited on flight endurance. The US Navy wanted an attack bomber that could carry the load of the Sky Raider, yet fly as fast as the jets. It had reluctantly come to the conclusion this was impossible, but by using twin turboprops, there seemed to be a faint possibility of carrying almost as heavy a load and about 115 miles per hour faster than the Sky Raider, though maximum endurance was unlikely to exceed 4 hours. Heinemann had been busy creating such diverse machines as the Mach 2 Sky Streak, the transonic F-4D Sky Ray, the all-weather Sky Knight, and the big A-3D Sky Warrior, by far the largest and heaviest machine designed for a carrier up to that time. But in odd moments, he had conducted an exhaustive study into why combat aircraft had become so heavy and complicated. By December of 1951, he had rationalized a new approach to design which took nothing for granted and tended to use new and simplified structures and systems and make every part do the work of two. As a study, he schemed a supersonic interceptor. It came out at the incredible gross weight of only 6,000 pounds, less than the thrust of the engine. The US Navy asked him to apply this philosophy to a requirement for a new attack aircraft, to fly certain specified missions at a maximum speed of 495 miles per hour, but weigh not more than 30,000 pounds. So Heinemann worked for 14 days and nights. His basic idea, he said, was to take the best jet engine I could get, stick a wing underneath, and put a saddle for the jockey on top, and leave out the rest. He never considered turboprops, and from the start made the new attack bomber smaller than contemporary fighters. But the results were so startling, they were hard to believe. Almost to a man, the technically experienced officers in the Bureau of Aeronautics considered the proposal so unrealistic that some called it irresponsible. Even the lean engineer's own team could hardly bring themselves to take the design seriously. Heinemann had added up the weights and found the total to be not 30,000, but just 12,000 pounds. So Heinemann called the project team together, gave each member a 3-view, delivered a brief description and said, "I think this can be done. It'll take a tough SOB to do it, but I am that person. I would like you all to join my team. Anyone who doesn't want to join, there's the door." Not one of his staff walked out. Still wholly unconvinced, the Bureau of Aeronautics told Heinemann to double the bomb load and add 115 miles to the combat radius, perhaps hoping that the whole proposal would just collapse. And what a surprise. Heinemann told them the new gross weight was just 14,300 pounds. Though many of the experienced Bureau of Aeronautics staff publicly proclaimed the aircraft couldn't be built, Douglas was given an order on June 21st, 1952 for the A-4D1 prototype, soon followed by 9 production A-4D1s, each to have an empty weight of 8,136 pounds and a gross weight of 15,000. Over the following months, the doubters gradually became not just converts, but amazed missionaries for the new machine. It became known as the Bantam Bomber and as Heinemann's hot rod, though in fact nothing had been stripped off, and it was certainly not a dangerous fast landing machine. Its advances were much more fundamental. Much had rested on the engine. The choice was the Wright J65, the American version of the light but powerful and efficient British Armstrong Siddeley Sapphire. Heinemann had found the growth factor in the A4D to be almost exactly 10, thus saving 1 pound in a component, saved 10 pound in gross weight in allowing the aircraft to be smaller and to burn less fuel. Cutting out a weapons bay saved 500 pounds. Making the wing with very advanced high-lift devices, including leading-edge slats never before put on so thin a wing, enabled it to be made so small it didn't need to fold. This alone saved 250 pounds. The wing skins were made in one piece, tip to tip, the whole wing forming an integral fuel tank. Heinemann cut out an afterburner, used alternating current electronics with thin cables, designed a new lightweight ejection seat, and packaged all various electronics into a single box, pressurized with dry nitrogen and a single multi-pin connector. To preserve the structural integrity of the wing, he made the landing gears retract forward, with the legs lying beneath the lower skin. He was angry when the US Navy, bothered at swept-wing fighters dragging their tails, made him lengthen the legs. But he pointed out that the A4D would not land at the same nose-high angle, and that stalky legs would reduce the allowable crosswind for deck landing and make the aircraft less stable on a rolling deck.
Commencing at about 0710 this morning. It's been a busy day on the flight deck also. The flight deck responding to the intelligence that's been coming into the ship, and A4s have been launched throughout
The first of 9 A4D1s was flown only a few weeks after the prototype on August the 14th, 1954. Though the J65 proved a disappointment with thrust of only 7,200 pounds, compared with 8,300 pounds for the equivalent Sapphire, one of these early aircraft, named Skyhawk, later in 1954, set a world 1,000-kilometre closed-circuit record in bumpy air at low level at over 695 miles per hour. The A4D1 went into combat service aboard carriers in October 1956 and was followed by the A4D2 with single-point pressure fueling and an in-flight refueling probe, as well as other changes. By this time, Douglas thought it was getting to the end of the line. Heinemann left to join General Dynamics, and the US Navy wrote the Bell specification for a Skyhawk replacement, which led to the LTV A7 Corsair II. Heinemann had tried to get the Rolls-Royce Spey turbofan into the Skyhawk. A brilliant aircraft would have resulted, but this came to nothing. Even the El Segundo plant had closed, and Douglas concentrated its facilities at Long Beach, which had previously built only US Air Force machines. Hardly anyone realized the Skyhawk family had not even reached the midway point. In 1965, the two-seat TA-4E started a new subfamily of tandem Skyhawks, and nearly all were fitted with dual flight controls. The TA-4E was redesignated TA-4F and was produced alongside the A-4F, the first of the so-called Camel Skyhawks with additional avionics in a large dorsal fairing. Some of the features of the A-4F included lift dumpers and spoilers, steerable nose wheel, extra pilot protection against gunfire or splinters, a 0-0 ejection seat, and low-pressure tires. These aircraft went into production in 1966, together with the A-4G and the TA-4G for the Royal Australian Navy, and the A-4H and the TA-4H for the Israeli Hail HaAvir. These are among the export versions fitted with the 30mm DEFA cannons.
Nice rocket, target.
Double lead, target destroyed. Charlie 23, double leader, returning to home plate.
By 1969, production had begun on the most numerous of all late model Skyhawks, and a variant that will be around for many years in the USA. The TA-4J was a purpose-designed advanced trainer with over 300 change controls, which in Vietnam proved to be an excellent FAC, that is forward air control aircraft. It's not widely known that in addition to the US Navy and US Marines, the US Air Force used many Skyhawks in Southeast Asia, some carrying target designation lasers. For the late 1960s, the A-4 was widely called the Scooter, partly because of its tall, narrow landing gears. Next came the A-4K and the TA-4K for the Royal New Zealand Air Force, with a braking parachute and a sub-type of the A-4F, which was designated the A-4KU and the TA-4KU. These were for Kuwait. With the A-4M, Douglas introduced the name Skyhawk 2 because of the extensive list of modifications, including the much more powerful P408 engine, extra ammunition, more powerful generator, and ram air turbo generator, larger bulletproof windscreen, braking parachute, and ARBS, angle rate bombing system. The A-4M was built for the US Marines in Kuwait, while the A-4N was built for the US Navy. The A-4L was the A-4C rebuilt with more powerful J65 engine, extra avionics in a camel hump, and various other improvements. A batch of 50 A-4Bs was rebuilt for the Argentine Air Force as A-4Ps, and another 16 for the Argentine Navy as A-4Qs. Singapore received 40 A-4Bs that had been rebuilt by Lockheed Aircraft Service Company, and these aircraft were designated A-4S and TA-4S. The Skyhawk's warload has been wide and diverse. The United States Marine Corps still continues to assign the Skyhawk to combat roles with free fall and guided ordnance. The Skyhawk has also been equipped with the later Hughes AGM-65 Maverick air-to-surface missiles, and may fit AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles on the outboard pylons. The Marine Corps Skyhawk also carries two 20mm Colt Mark 12 cannons with 100 rounds each. Two Martin AGM-12 bullpup air-to-surface missiles can also be carried on the outboard pylons. The US Marine Corps in-flight refueling configuration looks like this. Two 20mm Colt Mark 12 cannons with 100 rounds for each cannon. Two 450 US gallon drop tanks, plus one Douglas D704 buddy-buddy pod. The Skyhawk may operate as a buddy-buddy tanker in addition to receiving fuel via their fixed probes. The Argentine Air Force attack would carry a single 1,000-pound bomb plus two 20mm Colt Mark 12 cannons with 100 rounds per cannon and two 450 US gallon drop tanks. Argentine Air Force Skyhawks required the services of a KC-130 Hercules tanker to reach the Royal Navy Task Force in the Falklands Island during the 1982 conflict. The American Mark 82 500-pound and the Mark 83 1,000-pound bombs were also employed. On the other hand, the Argentine Navy attack configuration has the same cannons as the Air Force aircraft and the same size drop tanks too. It can also carry 6 500-pound snake-eye retarded bombs. In the early stages of the 1982 Falklands War, the naval Skyhawks planned to attack the Royal Navy Task Force from the carrier Vaintichko de Mayo. The aircraft could be bombed up with the 6 snake-eye weapons because of the shorter range, but the raid was cancelled as the result of insufficient wind for a launch. The Israeli Air Force once used the Skyhawk as its prime attack aircraft. However, the 20mm cannons were replaced by the locally built DEFA 30mm cannon. The Zuni launcher pod holds 4 5-inch rockets, and there's 1 pod on each wing, and the aircraft also carries 6 500-pound snake-eye retarded bombs. The Israeli Skyhawk has an unusual modification to the tail area of the aircraft. This extended jet pipe may look a little odd, but it offers some defense against heat-seeking missiles by reducing the infrared signature. Let's have a look at the key stores list that can be carried on the Skyhawk. The AIM-9 Sidewinder is a close-range air-to-air missile, and these were used on all versions. The Rafael Shafrir air-to-air missile is only used on the Israeli version. The LAU-10A Zuni series rocket launcher with single 5-inch rockets. The AGM-62A Walleye TV-steered glide bomb. Another weapon that's used only by Israel is the Israeli aircraft industry's Gabriel 111AS air-to-surface missile. Later versions of Skyhawk can carry the AGM-65A Maverick air-to-surface missile. In the normal gravity bomb range is the Mark 84 GP 2,000-pounder, the Mark 82 GP 500-pounder, and the Mark 83 GP 1,000-pound bombs. In the guided bomb range is the AGM-12 Bullpup Command Guidance air-to-surface missile, the Mark 82 Snake-Eye retarded bomb, which is in the 500-pound range. And lastly, in the rocket range is the LAU-3A rocket launcher for 19 rockets of 2.75-inch caliber. In the Vietnam War, the A-4 Skyhawk was nothing less than fantastic. Although the first American prisoner of war, Lieutenant Everett Alvarez, was a Skyhawk pilot, he was part of 2 air wings that flew 64 sorties against North Vietnam on August 5th, destroying more than half of the North Vietnamese PT boat force and setting fire to 90% of their supplies. The A-4 bore the brunt of the Navy offensive against the North until 1968. Thereafter, they were replaced aboard the larger carriers by A-7s. Skyhawks continued in operation aboard the older carriers until the United States withdrawal. As a result of their long and active combat life, more A-4s were lost during the Southeast Asia War than any other types of carrier-based aircraft, and accounted for nearly 37% of Navy combat losses, compared with just 10% for the A-7s. Likewise, 36% of the Marine combat losses were accounted for by single-seat A-4s and 2-seat TA-4Fs, the latter being flown in the Tactical Air Controller airborne role. Despite the losses in Vietnam, the Skyhawk soldiered on, even with the advances and successes of aircraft like the Sea Harrier and the more improved weapons like Sea Wolf, Sea Dart, Sea Cat, Rapier and Blowpipe. However, the Skyhawk was well tested against these major threats during the Falklands conflict, although the A-4 was restricted by the distance it had to travel to and from the targets. And the Skyhawk had time for only a single pass attack, so their overall effectiveness in the air war was disappointing. Going back to the Royal Australian Navy in 1965, strategic thinking had changed sufficiently once more for a new generation of fixed-wing aircraft to be ordered for the RAN, and Melbourne underwent an extensive refit to enable her to fly them. The Sea Venoms were replaced by Douglas A-4 Skyhawk fighter bombers and the anti-submarine Gannets by Grumman trackers. In July 1967, the Royal Australian Navy became the first export customer of the new-built A-4Gs, of which they received 8, and 2 TA-4Gs. During their period of operations, the Skyhawks gave sterling service, though in later times, something like half of the Skyhawk force was lost in accidents. a number of these whilst operating off the since-retired Melbourne.
Flaco, this is Captain. You have permission to fly.
Launch Pedro to port.
Pacific flying guard now proceeding to port side station.
ADR Flaco. Pedro's airborne.
Left 0 on the weather, ailerons forward, armlet switches off and safe, air brakes closed, fuel 4,000 in total, instruments checked 240, oxygen 7 litres, harness secure, hatches closed and locked, hydraulics lights out, head knocker up, controls checked.
Aircraft running up on deck.
Right.
Director, when you're all happy, away you go. Delta 2, fuel line approaching. 3 foot from basket. Moving in now. Locked in.
New contact, sir. 090, 120 miles. 4 aircraft, speed fast, closing.
Roger, let me have an exact speed as soon as you can. A-4 leader, head 080 for raid closing us from the east, approximately 120 miles now.
Roger, Melbourne. Delta 4's to intercept. Request radar vector.
Clearly, the A-4 Skyhawk series will be a part of the world aviation scene for a few decades. The A-4 of the future won't look much different from the aircraft now in service, although the aircraft has proven to be so adaptable that almost anything is possible. A good indication of the future worth of the A-4 can be seen in long-range Israeli plans for their aircraft. Significant reductions in the active A-4 inventory are expected throughout late 1989 because of anticipated sales, attrition and storage. It's estimated that only one squadron of A-4 aircraft will remain by 1995 as an operational training unit. At that point, the A-4s in Israel and in several nations will be rendering good service to pilots born long after the aircraft left El Segundo. For extraordinary heroism, on February the 7th, 1965, while serving as a jet attack pilot with VA-155 aboard the USS Coral Sea during a retaliatory airstrike against the Dong Hoi Army barracks and staging area in North Vietnam. When his aircraft was struck by enemy anti-aircraft fire on a low-level run into the target area and burst into flames, Lieutenant Edward Dixon elected to remain with his burning plane until he had released his bombs on the target area. Following his attack, he headed toward the sea, where he ejected from his flaming aircraft. By his inspiring and courageous devotion to duty, Lieutenant Dixon upheld the finest tradition of the United States Naval Service. Lieutenant Dixon did not survive the bailout. For extraordinary heroism on August the 21st, 1967, as a pilot in VA-163, embarked in USS Oriskany, during a combat mission over North Vietnam, Commander, then Lieutenant Commander James Busey, was leader of a section in a 6-aircraft bombing element which attacked the Hanoi thermal power plant in the face of the enemy's most sophisticated and complex arsenal of air defense weapons. As he commenced his attack, Commander Boosie sustained anti-aircraft hits to his aircraft. He skillfully regained control of his aircraft, and although the plane was severely damaged, renewed his attack, placing his weapons precisely on target. Subsequent bomb damage assessment photography confirmed that he had inflicted heavy damage to his assigned portion of the thermal power plant. Although still severely handicapped by his damaged aircraft, Commander Boosie evaded 4 surface-to-air missiles during his flight from the target area. Then, through skillful airmanship, he returned his crippled aircraft to the aircraft carrier. By his tenacious aggressiveness, professionalism, and heroic actions in the face of the enemy's massed and determined defenses, Commander Boosie upheld the finest traditions of the United States Naval Service. For extraordinary heroism, on July the 17th, 1967, as a pilot in VA-163 embarked in USS Oriskany. As the leader of a section of A-4E aircraft conducting a search and rescue mission for a pilot down the previous day, 32 miles southwest of Hanoi, North Vietnam, Lieutenant Commander Marvin Reynolds proceeded 70 miles inland through darkness and heavy anti-aircraft artillery fire to the search area, where he succeeded in establishing contact with a downed pilot. When the search and rescue commander informed him that positive voice contact with the pilot must be established before the helicopter could cross the beach, Lieutenant Commander Reynolds re-entered the area and established voice contact. Due to his low fuel state, he was forced to aerial refuel before returning to the scene, and this time leading the rescue force. Maneuvering so as to evade 3 surface-to-air missile launchings, he led the flight to the rescue scene. He attacked and silenced a large flak site endangering the helicopter. He then made repeated dangerously low passes over the pilot to ensure a successful pickup. During his regress, he successfully attacked and silenced one of the most menacing flak sites on the helicopter's return route. By his courageous conduct, exceptional skill, and fearless devotee to duty, he was primarily responsible for the successful rescue of the downed pilot, thereby upholding the finest traditions of the United States Naval Force. There have been many heroic stories about A-4 pilots, and these were but 3. But it just goes to show you what a tough little aircraft the A-4 Skyhawk really is. When the Douglas attack aircraft was only on paper, many experts said it simply couldn't be built. It's not quite the long-haul, long-endurance bomb truck the US Navy had vaguely in mind, and outwardly seemed to be too small to be useful. Somehow, Heinemann succeeded in creating an aircraft that was small on the outside, yet big in capability, to such purpose that the US Navy and US Marines bought over 2,000 in 5 distinct major versions. And the average price was then 1/10 of the cheapest 1981 aircraft available at the time to do the same job. An interesting tribute to what Ed Heinemann modestly referred to as just an honest, low-cost attack aeroplane did better than it was intended.